As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my
we just got to love that intro song. That intro song was a tune written in Tom Ficklin's community college class by one of his students as a project. It was brilliant. But salutations, New Haven, Connecticut, and the world. This is the Tom Ficklin Radio Show, 103 WHNN FM radio, where you see planetary range and discussions with impactful global citizens and thought leaders from your street to Wall Street to the alleys and the International Boulevard. Yes, and I have some fabulous guests today. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but I'm gonna just mention them and then we'll follow them in that order. But first I'm gonna say that we have the mighty Moral Mondays, Black Lives assistant dean of students or something at Trinity College and powerhouse himself, the mighty Bishop Selder's in the house. Gonna be good there. And yeah, and then we have a rising labor star at AAUP. Yes, we got Lori Bondro here, and she got the blue hair to light the day on fire. We love it. And then we've got our legendary on the train right now, because in New Haven, in case union people all across the country are worried about how do we win? Well, Leslie Bluteau and overthrew the union in New Haven. What she do? 31. They ran for 31 seats and they won every single one of them. So she's here today. We got that tireless warrior, that second grade bilingual teacher, that badass administrator, that Wyndham's Working Family Party town councilwoman, the mighty Rose Reyes. Oh, yes, yeah. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Norma Martinez, who has been the voice of reading recovery for all, rather. I'm thinking my literacy stuff, forgive me, but it's recovery for all. And we're so glad to have you today. And we got actions and we got things to talk about. And you know, Herbert Humphrey, the happy warrior, that senator, he said that compassion is not weakness and concern for the poor is not communism. It's American. All right, so today I'd like to say, Bishop Selders, could you tell us about your passion? We'll start off with you, sir.
My passion is doing the right thing because it's right to do. That's my passion. And in today's times when there are interests that are bound all over the place, where the rich are getting richer. I just noticed, I drove past the gas station and I saw $4 plus gasoline prices per gallon. Somebody's getting that money, and it certainly is coming out of our pockets into somebody's hands. But that's a struggle for a different day. Right now, we're focused on a couple of things with More Monday. We're focused on our continued effort to do the right thing around voting rights here in this state. When we think about voting rights, we think, that's down south, and we think Martin Luther King and Congressman John Lewis and all of those folks. And yes, that's a good place to begin, but we have that struggle right here. We want to permanently make sure we ensure the right to vote for everybody that wants to vote. And we want to take down the barriers all over the place, whatever those barriers can be. From motor voter, we did that a few years ago. To now, we want to make sure in a permanent way that we can get votes, absentee ballots, et cetera, et cetera. Don't believe the hype. Our elections are clean and good, and it is our civic duty. And I think it's kind of American too, to every now and then go down there to the poll or get you a ballot and send it in and say, this is what I think about about who these folks are that are representing us. And then we turn our attention wholly to workers and the campaign that is called Hero Pay or Hazard Pay. Those folk, you hear in the news, and Norman, you're going to say a little bit about this, I know. But we hear in the news about these line workers, firefighters and police officers and others who have spent time in this pandemic moments doing their work. But what we haven't heard enough about are the childcare workers, are the bus drivers, are the grocery store and retail workers, the building cleaners. We haven't heard enough about those folk who are in health centers, who are in these places and spaces that are caring for folk day for day, and they've done that. They've done their work behind the scenes largely, and they are deserving of hazard pay too. So we're calling on our state legislature and our state officials and the governor to do the right thing. Don't y'all just leave Pookie and Ray Ray and the rest of us out here on the limb. Those of us who have been serving, we are marshaling our forces, and we will be turning up. I'll talk a little bit about that a bit more later, but we will be turning up and showing up in spaces and places and asking, demanding that we do the right thing for our essential workers.
Let us remember that James Baldwin said, "While I love America, I reserve my right to criticize her." So that's American as can get. Lori, you're next, and I hear we're voting on a new contract. I'm in that union of yours.
Yes, Jesse, we are voting on a new contract, and we're pretty excited about the negotiations and how the negotiations are playing out for our students and for our faculty. We were under a lot of fire. We were at risk for losing a lot of our ability to really be able to serve the students. For example, one of the things that was on the table and in the initial negotiations was to increase our course load from what is currently already a really heavy course load. Four course loads are what we're carrying at the 4 state universities, and they were seeking to increase our course load to 5.5. I'm already really struggling to make sure that I'm giving my students adequate face time and meeting with them and really providing them with the mentoring that they need to shepherd them forward into the next stage of their career. And that's true for all of my colleagues as well. So the idea of taking on a 5.5 course load is in itself really an insurmountable barrier to being able to support the students. But in addition to that 5.5 course load, we were also being asked to increase our course caps. So that's another way that we would be limited in our ability to continue to provide really rich one-on-one contact with students in addition to the time that we spend with them in the classrooms. So I'm really excited that AAUP is joining with Recovery for All in this partnership, because we see this partnership as a way to reinforce the pipeline that helps students move from K-12 education through those community college pathways and state universities. And I happen to be coordinator of a doctoral program at Southern. We have currently got 4 doctoral programs, and I am so proud of every single one of my doctoral students for reaching that height and having that level of ambition. And I'm also proud to say that I have an incredibly diverse group of people at the doctoral level. So we're working hard at the state universities to pull students forward from the K-12 environment and bring them up and even reach for that terminal degree status and have those kinds of dreams be accessible rather than have those dreams communicated as being for other people or that, So thanks so much, Jesse, for having me. And I'm so excited to be here with this really amazing group of people.
Yeah, it'd be good if we can free those students from that $35,000 plus loan debt to get to those high places. But next we've got Leslie Buteau. I'm hoping that she'll be connected to us on that Amtrak train. I hope the Amtrak is working. Leslie, are you there?
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
All right. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Leslie Plateau, newly elected president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers. So glad to be here with this group. Like Jesse said, I'm on Amtrak, headed back from Washington, D.C., back home to New Haven. I'm working with American Federation of Teachers on a teacher shortage task force. We know firsthand, Rose knows firsthand, sadly, teachers are leaving the profession. We need to address pay inequalities. We need to address respect on the workplace. We need to address the fact that standard and high stakes tests are taking up too much of our time and energy. We need to bring back the joy into the curriculum, into our classroom spaces, and we need to center the healing that we know students and families need. Can you all still hear me?
We can hear you. Hear you.
All right. Okay, beautiful. So it was an honor to share space with labor leaders from around the country in DC as we're working on some very clear recommendations that we'll be unveiling this summer to let people know that we need a GI Bill for teachers. We need a new deal for teachers. We need to invest federal and state money. We know there's money. We need to invest this federal and state money into our teachers so that we can make the profession attractive again. We can bring back respect to the profession, and we can ensure that we're going to have the teachers, the counselors, the social workers, the library media specialists, that we're going to need all the support staff, paraprofessionals, and nurses to ensure that our schools are places of joy and healing. So I'm thrilled to be here. We're focused, quite clearly, really on making sure teachers understand that we are there to support them, and we want to do everything we can to bring the resources into the school buildings, not into consultants, not into central office positions, but resources into the school buildings to ensure that our students, families, educators, people who are directly serving students have what they need to do the job. It's a hard job, and we want to be as supportive as possible. And it's why I'm so thrilled to be working with Recovery for All to plan our march for our classrooms happening on March 30th. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it as the hour unfolds. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to make Connecticut people cognizant there is another model out there. So my sister-in-law is from Ireland. So because of this inflation rate, they gave them all a 20% cut in their energy. So whatever the heating oil you have your house, the gas that goes in your car, they cut the taxes, gave them 20%. They gave them an extra $200 a month for children's allowance, just to let you know that. And of course, they give all those seniors that they call over 55 free trains and free bus fares. And that is a capitalist country, as far as I know, over there. And I just thought, there's another way to go. And education is free in the land, from K to doctoral degree over there as well. So there are other models in the world we can follow. And guess what? I'll tell you, U2 from Bono, U2, that's a billionaire. He lives in Ireland, didn't stop him from becoming rich. So we're going to go to the Working's Family Party, a bilingual teacher. And Rose, give us is there any legislation?
So Professor Turner, I'm a geeky person. I want to thank Norma. Norma, you did some interpreting for some public hearings, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Did you do the one for Husky for Immigrants?
I didn't do the interpretation there. I did it last Tuesday for another hearing for the labor.
Which one did you do? And the reason this matters is because it's a tough place to be, having to take it in, and trying to present it in an objective way, because these are heart-wrenching stories. When I was listening to the testimonies from Husky for Immigrants, it was heart-wrenching. And then the interpretations you made were very touching. But
for the hero pay, the pandemic pay.
Exactly, because that was a federal effort, and then it was stopped, and then the state didn't pick it up. I mean, we have primary care workers with no bennies, and if they can't take care of themselves, it impacts us. Now, this is the part I have to explain. Teachers go into teaching because they love to teach, but they don't realize that they are agents of change, and that has a political implication. And you got to get geeky about this, because I learned that legislation has two roles, right? In even numbers, they talk about finances; odd numbers, they talk about policy. And we didn't know that, right? So we go to these hearings. And so there were 19 bills pertaining to education and its funding. One we need to always stress is the expansion of monies for bilingual education, for example. They asked from 1 million to 3 million. That's just, drops in this bucket. Our rainy day fund is maxed out. It can't take any more money, which means we're doing okay. And then Bishop Selders, I testified on behalf of the absentee balloting. We are one of two of the most restrictive absentee ballot voting states in the nation. And Denise Merrill, God bless her soul, said she has to respond to other Secretary of States going, you guys act progressive, but look what you've done, or you haven't changed. And it was really painful to listen to some of the Republican arguments that went round and round in circles. Why does all this matter? Because if we have to vote on school budgets, we have to have people who use our schools to be able to vote, right? I also testified for the Fair Work Week. I have parents who are on call scheduling. What a nightmare that has been. It has been so unfair. It's so abusive. And this is going to be my 5th time testifying about some form of that bill. And why am I out there hitting the other committees instead of just education? Because it's all interrelated. You cannot work in a silo here. If you're a humanist and if you understand what justice and equity is, you have to dip in each pool for a little bit. So that's where I am. We had 19 bills. We want to keep track of the charter siphoning our monies. We want to support the breakfast monies for our students and certifications. Let's see what else there is. We had to argue about getting rid of the Ed TPA, which was a nightmare. Ed TPA is a separate assessment for student teachers that just took away from their love of teaching. And what else? And more importantly, though, the most important thing is that HB 5283, which is the new method of funding public education, because the way we do it now is not equitable. And the way we partial out the monies is not equitable. So that's where I am. Look at me, I'm all geeked out.
All right. Now we're going to go to the amazing Norma. Norma, you're going to rally the troops.
We're working on it.
Rally.
So thank you for having me here.
Before I marched.
Yeah. And thank you for having me here. Again, for folks in the audience, my name is Norma Martinez-Hosang, and I'm an organizer with the Recovery for All Coalition, which is a coalition of 58 labor, community, and faith organizations and leaders. And our goal is to change the systemic racism that exists in Connecticut. And we want to do that by changing our upside down tax structure, because right now, the lower to middle income payers are paying a higher percentage of their income in taxes, while at the same time, in the last 2 years, the 13 Connecticut billionaires have amassed $13.7 billion more, while communities continue to suffer from unemployment, from lack of health insurance, from a threat of eviction, and from much, much more. So we want to change the tax structure, but we want to make sure that that money gets invested in the programs that we're talking about here. We want to make sure that that gets invested in public education, in housing, in healthcare. And we want to make sure that, that corporations and the very, very rich pay what they owe to Connecticut. And so that's why we are having that march for our classrooms March 30th. But before then, next Wednesday at 1 p.m. in the Capitol Rotunda, we are having our very own Bishop Selders here lead a prayer circle with essential workers to make sure that we pass HB 5356, which is a very small show of thanks to our essential workers that were forced to go to work. This includes teachers like Leslie, like Rose, like Lori, who could not do their work remotely. And it's a very, very small It's $2,000 for full-time employees and $1,000 for part-time employees. So we are making the moral case that this is something that needs to be done. And then on March the 30th, we are really going to spotlight the need to invest in public education in Connecticut, but really focusing in the New Haven teachers. So we'll have Lori there, we'll have Leslie, we'll have lots of other teachers there talking about the exact stuff that Leslie was talking about, that Lori was talking about. When we don't invest in public education, who suffers is the children. And when we're talking about children in New Haven, we're talking about a large concentration of low-income students and students of color. So we need to invest in our public school system so our families can thrive. So you see, Recovery for All brings together these organizations to fight together, again, to change the systemic racism that exists in our tax structure, but also to shine the light on the kinds of investments that we need in Connecticut so that people could live healthy lives like we all deserve. And so we hope that you all could join us. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you who, all of you are part of our Recovery for All through your organizations, and so excited to be working with you.
Excellent, excellent. I'm cognizant that on March 30th, we're marching for classroom. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that the state of Connecticut, our Supreme Court, in January 2018, ruled that the state of Connecticut is not responsible for giving a quality and equitable education to Black, brown, and special education children. If you can't do right for the children, who can you do right for? And the very nature of the state is to breaking it up to 160 different districts, ruling it by property taxes, so that I know that I have schools in Hartford without librarians, without reading teachers, without enough special education teachers. In Bridgeport, we have only 50% of the special education teachers required. So I'd like to get this idea that Norma said, systemic racism, it's white supremacy. It's the most un-American thing that we could have, or maybe we might say maybe it's the most American. It could be the idea we need to challenge, but I'd like to know, give me some hope. What can we do? Because silence and apathy just doesn't cut it. So if we went down the line and we reversed ourselves, we began with you, Norma, you tell us how to fight, we go to Rose, then we'll go to Leslie, and then we'll do Lori, and then we'll get the mighty Bishop Selders to give us a good amen. Yes, we got it. So Norma, go ahead. Give us some hope.
I mean, I think what's happening on March 30th in New Haven should give us all hope, right? The goal there is to bring community members, teachers that are in the classroom, the paraprofessionals that feed our kids, that work in the office, the faculty members from Southern Connecticut University, faculty members and other staff that work at Gateway Community College here in New Haven. I think that's the hope that I see. When we fight together, we could win, and really, until we unite and show power in numbers, it will be hard to change systems. But I believe that the kind of work that Recovery for All has been doing over the last couple of years is the kind of work that needs to continue to really shine the light on really who is to blame. If we don't have enough money, that's not because it's not in Connecticut. There are policy changes and changes that could be made so that we increase our budget and then we fund these critical services. I think it was Rose or somebody else who mentioned our rainy day fund is flush with money. We got close to $4 billion from the American Rescue Plan that could be used for public education. It could be used to hire more community college teachers. So the money is there right now to fund these critical services, but we also need long-term investment. And so that's why we need to fight to change some of the laws that right now allow for we're talking about billionaires, multimillionaires and large corporations to pay what they owe so that we could all thrive, just like those billionaires are doing. So I think that's the hope, us being here together and uniting to take a stand on the streets to show our power and to start linking, like we're doing, what happens in kindergarten matters to whether or not a child's going to be able to be able to attend a community college or a university, a state university. And we're going to continue to fight. So we hope to see you all out there fighting with us.
So just before we go to the next one, there is a comment in our Facebook stream today from an early childhood educator. I don't know this bill, but asking about HB 5356.
Yeah, the hero pay.
Yeah. So does anybody know anything about that?
Yes, it's to pick up from where the federal government dropped off, the 1,000, 2,000, if you were identified as essential worker, which isn't just, emergency services, but if you were compelled to be a public servant and work at site, this is where you're supposed to get your hero pay.
So we could write our legislators, we could call them, we could post that on Facebook. All right, I like that. I can support that one. Power to the people and our early childhood educators and all our working people deserve that. All right, I broke out trend over there. I saw the comment. Rose, you're next, and you just gave us a little piece. Is there any other bill we should look at?
So fighting for what's right is multi-pronged, right? And so there's some of us who can keep track of certain policy developments through legislative work, and just take a peek and just poke your representatives about particular topics of concern that impact the quality of life for your families, communities, and the profession. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to be in the silo of education bills. It could be the tax restructuring bills. It could be the human service bills. It could be the general ordinances such as voting, because we need people to be there. And just get accustomed to speaking on behalf of your experience and on behalf of your professional viewpoint. And those senators and representatives are working for you.
Perfect. All right. Now, Leslie, you're on that train. I hope you're still with us. And I hope it's like, that train that you don't need no ticket to get on board, that kind of stuff. But Leslie, what do teachers need us to fight for right now?
I am here, but the conductor's talking too. So maybe take it to Laurie and then
we'll go to Laurie and then we'll come back to you. Laurie, you had a great story you posted in the chat.
Sure, yeah. So my son is an ELL teacher in West Haven, and he is extremely passionate about his job, and he really loves what he does. However, he is clearly being given a deficit in terms of resources. The classroom where he teaches is in the basement of the building. It's far away from where all of the other classes that the students need to take is. And yet he does not have a telephone in his classroom. And so in order for him to be able to reach out to get to any of the students, he has to walk through the building and go up from the basement and retrieve the students. So he spends a lot of time just trafficking around the school because they have not provided him with a telephone in his classroom so that he can call the teachers and have the students be sent to his room to do their work. This is a clear example of the systemic inequity that is positioned in the K-12 environment and that continues to perpetuate the lack of access to higher education for individuals who are not monolingual. And in addition to, that situation, I have noticed among my own students in a research study that I conducted, I asked them, I asked my students of color who are graduate students, what are some of the barriers that you faced in coming to graduate education. And one of my participants very clearly said, listen, I was at an under-resourced school when I was in K-12. And so I exited feeling like I didn't have the same skill set that my peers had when I entered into college. I didn't feel like I was able to keep pace with my peers. I started to internalize a failure identity about myself. And by the time I had graduated, I really didn't see myself as being capable of graduate study. So this whole thing of having an under-resourced school really does impact a student's feelings of their own capacity for success. And it impacts our communities because then those communities are at a loss for representative leadership, where leadership is reflecting the identities of the individuals who occupy the communities. So these initiatives that help our students and facilitate their upward mobility into leadership positions is so incredibly important because it really impacts the way that individuals in a community experience their own identities as well as a sense of community. And I'm done now. Thank you.
To give you one more clear example of how this works. There's a Harvard school. 13-year-old dies of a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
There are VPs in the building that teachers are trying to reach. Those VPs used to have secretaries. Those secretaries used to answer the phone. The VPs are out making their rounds, doing their observations, doing their stuff. They can't be by the phone. The phone calls are made. We'll never know if the delay in answering those, without secretaries in those offices, those VPs used to have secretaries, and they're gone. And $144 million went to the city of Hartford from recovery money. And we couldn't have hired back some secretaries? That's the same school that no longer has a music teacher who happened to be a Black teacher in that school. All right? You know, and I could go on about urban schools without counselors, without social workers, without special education teachers, without reading teachers. What I'm saying, and I'm going to, before we go to Leslie, I know she's on the train, I'm going to go to Bishop Selden. It must be made clear that racism has a direct impact. It isn't just calling someone a name. It isn't a physical attack. And Coretta Scott King told us that it is, that it's an act of violence. So Bishop Seldes, if you could take us to that concept that racism is an act of violence against innocent people.
For sure. My spiritual teacher, and those of you who know me or who've heard me say a word or two or three over these last years will hear me quote from Dr. Howard Thurman, who is the teacher and spiritual guide for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He said this, he said, the formula is simple. Love begets love. Hate begets hate. Indifference begets indifference. And then he goes on to posit that that's often true, right? You know, what you bring, you also produce, right? So Dr. King kind of remixed this idea and says, how about we structure what he began to talk about in his last years of life, the beloved community, where we're not replicating hate and indifference, but we're replicating love. We're reaching out beyond that which would historically and traditionally separate us. And we come to a common space, a space for all, recovery for all. I'm slashing, I'm grabbing. The point I'm trying to make, and I think I hope I'm making it clear enough, is that there is something that's beyond the politics, that's beyond left and right. There's something beyond, this side or that side that should pull at us at some point to enact more than just words and more than just policies and more than just what you think about a thing. It ought to call you to a higher purpose Frederick Douglass said it like this. He said, I prayed for 20 years. Didn't get no answer until I started praying with my legs. You got to move from the space and place of the, I'm not picking on my Muslim brothers and sisters, but you got to get off the carpet. After you say your prayers, we got to get off the carpet, roll the carpet up, and get to the streets, get to the spaces and places where power, where policy, and where difference is made within the context of our living, our right now living. The call for me, the yearning and the pleading. I'm begging. How about that? I'm begging that we, from our children and schools to our heroes who haven't been given just $2,000 for a year's worth of work. Come on now, y'all know that ain't a lot of money. That's not a lot of money, but it's the money that's already been carved out vis-a-vis the federal action that now we're putting back in a quote rainy day fund that gets raided. Let me just say this: in the 22 years I've lived in Connecticut, that rainy day fund gets tapped every time folk want to tap it. But you mean to tell me we're gonna have an argument about this kind of pay for teachers and folk who've been on the front line, who haven't been in front of the cameras, right? It's not just those that we would traditionally think are our line workers or our essential workers. It's the service workers, right? Along the highway on 91 or 95 that work in those, when you stop to use the bathroom, then you go get your coffee, at the Dunkin' Donut, and then you go get your a burger or fries over there at the McDonald's. It's those corporations that are renting space on land that is owned by the state, that they pay $1, $2, or $3 to lease that space, then to make money, and then to decide to pay the least amount to the people who work there day for day. Something wrong with that. Something wrong with that.
Amen, amen, amen. And I'm hoping we have Leslie back, because I think she can shed some light on the idea that a student's learning conditions are a teacher's working conditions, a student's learning conditions are a staff's working conditions. Can you help
Laurie's son just proved that. Yeah, but also, Laurie, I want to also point out that that's exactly the internal attitude that is prevalent in this state regarding emergent bilinguals. Anyone who's not in the particular profile of the upper, middle, and upper classes. And it's been an internal struggle for the State Department of Education responding to the needs of the districts of color. They have a formula, and they have our districts rated, and I'm part of the Seven Sisters, the last group. And guess who that is? New London, New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Wyndham. And who else? I'm missing someone. I'll find my list in a minute.
Is it Danbury?
Norwalk.
I'll pull it up. Somebody get an answer.
Meriden, Waterbury. I think there's 19.
It's actually not Meriden. Let me see.
Not Meriden.
No.
Maybe
I'm
they
talking
moved
about
up by $1.
CDEFGHI. They're nine.
Oh, for the bilingual.
Nine groupings, educational reference groups, and I'm part of the last one. There's 7 of us, and we call it the Seven Sisters. Yes, go find out if Leslie is still connected.
Sure, Leslie.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. What's going on in New Haven?
All right. So first, I just want to build off of what everybody else was saying with respect to resources. I'm tired of hearing that there's not enough money to pay for things. As Norma said, 13 billionaires in the state of Connecticut. We could tax them, they would not feel it, and those resources would be felt immensely by our community. Laurie mentioned Yale in the chat. We know Yale's endowment is $40 billion. They made $10 billion just in the last year on interest. The $5 million deficit that New Haven Public Schools is facing this year is a rounding error for a Yale accountant. It's immoral, it's unethical, and I'm tired of hearing that the money's not there, and that's at the city and state level. Meanwhile, let's look at the federal government. The amount of money that is spent on defense and military, again, is vast and atrocious when we think about the pennies that we're begging for our children and for our families. So let's just continue to put that reality out in front to say no longer will we accept that there isn't enough money. There is money. There's just not yet will to spend it for the families, the children, and the working people who need it. And so what do we need in our schools? We need stability. Teachers want to be able to teach. And right now, because of the chaos that we've all experienced, because of the mass trauma we've all experienced, we are lacking stability in our classrooms. So if we're going to be able to do our job, teach our students in the way that we want to, we're really seeking for more stability in our classrooms. And I'm passing in my ticket, Professor Turner. So how do we get the stability, right? We get the stability through having more people working in our schools. So one, we need to ensure that we're keeping our teachers who are currently teachers, and we're making sure that we're creating a pipeline for teachers to become teachers and grow into the profession. And how can we do that? I'll tell you. Why is anyone incurring debt to become a teacher? For anyone who wants to become a teacher, it should be tuition-free bachelor's, master's certification. And then we can ensure there is a pipeline of highly qualified teachers coming through who are going to join us in our classrooms and in our learning spaces to make sure students have what we need. It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that people are incurring debt to take on these jobs as teachers. We need to raise starting salaries. We need to ensure that people have high quality benefits. It used to be that when you became a teacher, you were insured high quality benefits. Those are slowly eroding. And meanwhile, districts are spending huge sums of money on healthcare benefits for teachers. We still don't have Medicare for all. Imagine the money that could be spent for students if the federal government took care of health insurance for everybody. We have to be willing to talk about these examples to ensure that we have stability in the classroom that we're looking for. And one last thing, can you still hear me, folks?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last thing is, I think that the conventional narrative used to be that you could use education to fix the problems of society. And I think teachers are tired of hearing that, to be honest. I think the reality is right now that we need to address the problems in society so that education can become healthy, whole, and intact again. And I just want to flip that framing for people, because we can't rely on a starved system to fix the problems that capitalism and racism have caused our community. Instead, we need to fix the problems of capitalism and racism so that our schools can be where people can flourish. So I invite people to just flip that narrative and see what they could do with that and join us to support and march for our classrooms on March 30th. Thanks for everybody's patience with me as I'm in and out here. I appreciate this group so much.
No problem. I want to remind people that Silicon Valley was built in a California that used to be the #1 spender for public education. It's now somewhere down in the 40s. In California, where higher education at any public institution in their state was free. That's why Silicon Valley moved to California. So Connecticut needs to wake up, and understand that if we became the state that made education, higher ed free, not only for teachers, for nurses, for doctors, for paras, for lawyers, for them all, if we could do that, I promise you, high-tech industry would flood to our state. If we started to really fund our schools in the way that children deserve, we would have a new Silicon Valley, and it would be right here in Connecticut. And last but not least, imagine if an America that told corporate America, you no longer have to be responsible for healthcare. Told workers, you no longer have to be responsible. Do you know why American car companies move to Germany, move to Japan, move overseas? It's because that healthcare They do not have to contribute. It's free. The salaries are higher. They do that. So I say, let's fight the power. So people, we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to start with Bishop Selders. You got to give us that final amen. Everyone, just 1 minute each. Tell us what we should be doing. Hey, and I want to go to that state capitol, and I want to have a press conference that demands equity for every child in every school in the state of Connecticut. I'm ready. I'm ready. All right, Bishop Selders.
Sure. The number one thing is don't be caught inactive. Don't be caught with a cause worth fighting for that you stand on the sidelines. This train is rolling. And I'm going to tell you something else. We will win.
Got it. You got it. He always gives us that other one about the moral compass, the arc bending towards justice. We love that. All right. So we'll go, Norma, we'll go to you, then we'll go to Rose, and we'll try to keep going as long as we can.
So just, you could sign on to our newsletter at recoveryforallct.org to get on the listserv, and you could hear about the actions that we're having. So join those actions. If you're a union member, join your union and to take action. Join an organization, join Recovery for All to show that we have power as community and that we care and that we're going to continue to fight. We may not win everything this time, but we're going to continue to fight. And the more of us that get involved, the stronger we will be. So that's what I want to leave you with. Come out next week on the 16th at 1 p.m. to the Capitol to join the prayer circle for essential workers, and come out in New Haven on March 30th at 4 p.m. to fight for public education.
I forgot to say, this is Bishop Selders again. I forgot to say, we are dedicated, and for a number of years now, to the fight and the cause of justice on a number of different fronts. This fight, this struggle around the least of these. I think I can be in several faith traditions books if I say what we do to the least of these. I hear Jesus say, "You've done it to me." And so it is in the context of those on the margins of our communities, those who are forgotten in our communities, those who are not the big ticket items. If we, in fact, don't do it for the least of these, boy, we may have a reckoning far worse than that which we would call hell to pay. I think it is time now in this state, one of the richest states, if not the richest state per capita in the United States, to lead and not just follow. Perfect. More Monday, CT.org.
All right. Leslie, we're going to your house on March 30th, aren't we? Are you there?
Come on down. You know it.
Could you tell us what should we expect? Should I bring my bullhorn? Should I bring my cowbell? Should I bring my drums? Should I bring a big sign?
Please, yes. You know what we need? We need to honor the fact that we have been isolated. Not only are we using this march and rally to call for fair funding for our classrooms, we're also using this march and rally to reflect on the fact that these last 2 years have been so hard. So we want to bring the joy, bring the music, bring the art, bring the celebration. Teachers have been so isolated from each other. Teachers have been so overwhelmed trying to keep students safe, trying to keep themselves and their families safe. And when I say teachers, I mean all people who are serving the needs of our students in our schools. I'm including paraprofessionals, school nurses, social workers, school leaders. All of us have been working to support our students and keep them safe. And we need this moment to come together with joy, with art, with music. And the words of Bishop Selders, who he quoted, indifference begets indifference. The future is not written. It is not set in stone that our schools have to be continued to be underfunded. It is within our control to dream and believe in another possible world where people's needs are met and schools can be places of joy and healing. And I invite everyone who believes that, even if you think it's so far off, it's not possible. We didn't think that we would be here. 5 years ago, we did not think we would be here. that I'd be sitting here on a mask, with a mask on a train, traveling from Washington, D.C. But here we are. So let's keep in our mind's eye the possibility that our schools can be places of joy and healing, and let's come together and celebrate the good work of educators throughout our state.
Let's go to Rose Riez, because there's some joy in our bilingual classes in Willimantic. I know there is.
Well, I was going to defer my minute. I'll split my minute with Bishop Selders, but I do want to remind. I'm also on the LPAC for AFT, and I'm a VP for my union. But every union is different, and that is the thing that is keeping us from coalescing well, because we're separated by our resources. You know, what's an issue for my seven sisters is not an issue for Group A. I don't know how to compel the Group A to have compassion for the Group I. So that's my conundrum, and that's why I turn to Bishop Selders. Please take this and help me lead.
Well, I think I've named it very clearly. It is, if you are now finding yourself thinking, what should I do? Show up. Show up. There are spaces and places where we are calling for action. We're calling for differences to be made. Put your bodies in the way. Be inconvenienced for much. Mask up and let's go.
Mask up and let's go. Lori, with this possibly a new contract in hand, AAUP still going to show up on the 30th, right? And we're still going to show up next Wednesday. And we're still going to turn up, as Bishop Selders says, because we got a fight to win, the long one. Tell us what AAUP's got in mind.
Absolutely. AAUP is going to be there. We are going to be showing up in numbers. We've got our posters and our banners ready to go. And we've got red T-shirts for members of the community who would like to show their red. I do want to add a plug for individuals who are already occupying leadership roles and are successfully engaging in activism and community organizing, to really look to who is going to be the next generation. Who are the people that you can tap to join you and follow you? Think of that old Fabergé ad, tell two friends, bring two friends in, and then have them bring two friends in. Because the more that we can tap a friend, or we can be a mentor to someone who is coming up, the more we're able to increase our numbers. And that's a really important and powerful part of the action that we're doing. So we need to show up ourselves, but we also need to create community, and we need to tap a friend and bring other people into the actions that we're doing.
So it's that Black Lives Matter terminology that Bishop Selders brought to Connecticut, turn up. It reminds me of a medicine man on the Tohono Reservation where I worked for 4 years. Told me something. He said, when the owl calls your name, Jesse, he says, don't let him catch you sleeping. Be ready. Don't let him, don't be, because you're going to say, I need 5 minutes to call my mother. He's going to say, you don't have it. I need 5 minutes to make peace with my brother. You don't have it. I need peace with my neighbor. I need to call my child. I need to make amends. He said, you will not have it. So you must live this life in a way that you are always ready. And to be always ready, the one way that I think we can do that is we could stand up not only for ourselves, but for our brothers, stand up for our children, stand up for our young people. And I want to make Julian Vasquez, Dean of the University of Kentucky, Julian Vasquez, and Secretary of the NAACP of Education for Kentucky, said something about millennials to me, because, I'm of that age. We start talking a little bit about millennials, maybe they're lacking. And Julian said, you're wrong, Dr. Turner. I'm going to tell you something about these millennials. When you talk about healthcare, they say, of course. When you talk about justice, they say, of course. When you say Black Lives Matter, they say, of course. When they say, stand up for what's right, of course. He said, you're trying to sell them on a job. What you got to do is sell them on a mission. And they need the mission. So one of the most beautiful things why I'm so honored to be in this room with these powerful voices, these voices of honor and these voices of justice, real warriors today, is because you're those people. You're the people that Connecticut needs. So when we think Norma, we're going to say, I know we got the March rally. I know next week the prayer service is on. I know March 30th is coming, but you got to tell me that Recovery for All is going to keep leading this fight. Moral Mondays is keep going to lead this fight. Labor's still going to lead this fight. Teachers not only, the true teacher, Henry Bassett, Ebenezer Bassett at Central called the true teacher, the teacher that defends his students in the classroom outside. So Norma, take us to that little piece that promises us there's milk and honey in the promised land. And Recovery for All can take us there, sister.
Let's talk
Yes.
about food.
We're going to continue to take action. We started last year, and we believe that that's the only way we win, by taking action and hearing the stories of the people affected with this made-up austerity. So we're going to continue to be on the streets next week, later in March, and beyond. So stay tuned. Thank you, Jesse, for having us here.
And of course, Bishop Seldes, remind us that Black Lives Matter. You're the last voice of the day.
Sure. I want to echo what we've been saying together collectively. When we fight, when we get in the struggle, when we pay attention to the things that matter to us. Again, we've been talking about children. We've been talking about voting rights. We've been talking about what's fair and equitable and just and right for workers who are essential workers in particular, schools, teachers, janitorial services provided by that secretary in the office to answer the phone at a school. These are essential workers. We are the people that matter. And you take that conversation, this conversation, to the next level and get involved. When we fight, when we struggle.
Thank you. Humble and honored to be the host of today's show. Thank you, Tom Ficklin.
In myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you're going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down,